Hey everyone, it's me Moises Vargas and welcome to my EDFR 6302 video reflection. Let's go ahead and get started. So in this video, I am going to highlight three different sections of our educational psychology book. These three sections or passages that I read in our book have really made a connection with me and what I do in my everyday life as a pre-kindergarten teacher. So I'm going to first go over Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how needs affect a student's ability to learn. Then I'm going to talk about play in the classroom and how children really do need play in order for them to learn. And finally, I'll go over response or intervention, otherwise known as RTI, and I'm going to talk about what RTI is and why it's relevant to me as a pre-K teacher. So let's go ahead and get started with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What I'll be going over is found on page 466 of our textbook. And although I did learn about Maslow's hierarchy of needs during my undergrad studies, I didn't reflect on them the same way I do now as a third-year teacher. Maslow's hierarchy of needs are grouped into four main categories. I know on my screen you see a total of seven different categories, but the lower four are known as the deficiency needs. And then we have our cognitive needs, our aesthetic needs, and finally self-actualization. Children who do not have their deficiency needs met, which are psychological needs, safety, love and belongingness, and esteem, then they cannot move on to their cognitive needs. And some of those deficiency needs are described as, lack of oxygen, no food, water, protection from potentially dangerous situations, a lack of receiving love, or not being part of a family. And like I mentioned, when students don't have that, then they can't fulfill their cognitive needs. And this brought me to want to discuss about a discussion forum post that I did for our class, and it was a question regarding, what could you expect from a student who comes to school hungry and is afraid of their neighborhood? And I just, of course, reflected back to my own experiences with my students, and I just really realized how big and great of an impact teachers can make if students, if you're aware of your students' needs. And I just really plan on printing this pyramid as a constant reminder of the needs that children need to be met. One of my new go-to quotes when I'm thinking of, what students need to be met is Maslow before Bloom. We need them to really fulfill up to self-actualization before we can expect them to really go into deep learning. Next, I want to talk about play in the classroom. This is something that really resonates for me because as a pre-kindergarten teacher, it's a really big part of my day. Because we do centers, and in centers, children learn. They learn through play. I decided to highlight on a small section on our book on pages 76 and 77 because at times I truly feel judgment from other educators who walk into my class and make comments like, "Oh, it must be so easy to teach pre-K because all you do is play," when of course that's not the case. And granted, these teachers probably didn't specialize in early childhood education the way I did, but I just really think back to our text when it says that the brain develops with stimulation and play provides some of that. Play allows children to experiment safely as they learn about their environment, try and act out new behaviors, solve problems, and adapt to new situations. The play that we see in pre-kindergarten classrooms are not to keep children busy, but instead the play that someone sees in pre-K classrooms are carefully planned out, ensuring that all developmental needs are being met. There, of course, is also play that isn't structured, but children learn the most when communicating freely with their peers. There are four major components that are targeted and met through play. The first one being cognitive, the cognitive aspect of development. And that's the way in which each child learns, solves problems, and acquires knowledge about the surrounding environment and increases the ability to interact with it. Then we have physical development. This includes activities that use physical movements to allow children to use their energy, and it gives children the chance to develop gross and fine motor skills. They also are able to learn new things and socialize. And that brings us to our social part of the development. And in this play, children of the same age interact with each other. The play is structured and it may incorporate elements of pretend or even imagination. And finally, we have our emotional development aspect that is in regards to play. And pretend and group play can contribute to children learning to express and understand their own and other people's feelings, other children's feelings. As the new school year approaches, I worry about how play is going to look like in my classroom while being compliant with all of the CDC guidelines. But now, more importantly, I know how to stand my ground when someone comes into my classroom and says something a little bit ignorant, like I mentioned before. A quote that I really enjoy reading and looking back to again from Maria Montessori is, "Play is children's work." And I kind of want to print this as a poster to post at my door, kind of as a disclaimer to when someone walks into my classroom that yes, they're playing, but these students are working. And finally, the last section that I want to kind of discuss is RTI, otherwise known as response to intervention. And this information is found on pages 163 and 164 of our text. I really wanted to highlight on this because I found this section very interesting because I hear the term RTI all the time. I mean, I even place students in RTI, but I never fully understood the why. I mean, I know that we place them because they need help learning, but I didn't understand why I had to place pre-kindergarten students or students in early childhood education in preschool in that kind of intervention. So before I talk about the why, I kind of want to let you know what RTI is. So RTI is a process to make students get appropriate research-based instruction and support as soon as possible, and that teachers are systematic in documenting the interventions that they have tried with these students. In RTI, there are 3 different tiers. We have tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 being the students that we don't have to worry about the most. These are students that are pretty much on target and what they need academically. Then we have our tier 2 students and our tier 3 students being our students that we really need to focus on, and these are students that are really struggling in our classes, whether it's behaviorally or academically. So tier 1 is school-wide, every grade level, and we have to provide high-quality research-based academic and behavioral instruction. We usually serve about 75 to 80% of students well, and they will attain the expected appropriate outcomes. Just like I mentioned, these students are doing pretty good. And then tier 2, targeted supplemental instruction for about 15 to 20% of students who do not achieve as hoped in tier 1. This is offered 3 to 4 times a week for 30 minutes each session, and this can be taught by a regular teacher, usually in small groups. And finally, we have our tier 3. Like I said, these are intensive interventions for about 5 to 10% of the population in our school. And preferably, this is taught by specialists, the intervention, 5 times a week for about 45 minutes per session. Very small groups or either one-to-one. I know that in my school district, we don't have enough interventionalists or specialists. So I, as a teacher, help my tier 3 students. And a really big takeaway from this section that had me reflecting as to why it's important in pre-K, and I quote, is RTI has been most successful for younger students with basic processes such as letter sound connections and learning to read. Oh my goodness, that's what we do in pre-K. They're doing the letter sound connections, and we're starting to teach them to read by the end of the year. So I like it because, of course, we can't just wait for students to fail before we intervene. We need to take action as soon as possible to ensure that those students, can have the most successful educational journey. All right, well, that concludes my reflection video. I just want to say that I made so many connections with our text that I'm ready to take back and apply as a teacher for this upcoming school year. Although a lot is unsure of what this school year might look like, there's a lot of knowledge that I gained that I'm ready to apply and just be really flexible this year. And I would love to stay connected with everybody in some way or another if we don't have each other in other classes. So I did include my professional Instagram and Twitter where I post teacher-related things or I just retweet things that are going on right now in our educational world, which right now has been a lot. And I also included my UTRGV email in case anyone ever needs anything. I try my best to help out as much as I can. So that email is moises.vargas01@utrgv.edu. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of 2020. Things will get better. Fingers crossed. All right. Have a great one. Bye.